And we are going to wait and make sure that we have all participants and everybody waiting for us. However, because it's 3:01 and I don't want to keep everyone waiting, we'll just start the session. And the first things I would like to do with you is to take you through some of the navigation of the tool we are using. So I'm just going to go back a few slides to the beginning and give you a quick overview. Some of you may have used GoToWebinar before, but just in case you didn't, on the screen you very likely have all the tools for you as a participant on the top right side, including an orange arrow. And if at any point your tools will disappear, it's very important that that arrow is pointing to the left, not to the right. If it's pointing to the right, that means your tools disappeared. You can set the view for you so that it always stays open. You just have to go to the view in top of that navigation there and click on that, and there will be an option to auto hide control panel. That way your tools, where you can see the attendance, where you can see the information, it will never hide. It will always stay open. On the left side, you will have a screen with all the content I will be sharing and all the information. So this way you will be able to see my screen. And I will be just navigating through different screens. So we will start with the PowerPoint presentation, but then hopefully I will be able to share with you some of the screens from my computer, including my Dropbox and my Access and how I'm navigating through it as well. So hopefully that will work for you. Again, if you have any questions at any time, please raise your hand. Please let me know if there's anything I'm missing or if there's something wrong. Now, going back to the navigation and quick tips I can provide you with, the session for today was set up to only use the microphone and speaker, so you're not able to call in, but hopefully everything works for all of you, and it seemed to work for everyone. There's a question box and a chat box that you can use during the session, and as I mentioned, there is a hand that you can raise if you have any questions or comments. And a reminder that I am recording the session after the actual webinar. We are going to share the recording on our website. On AlphaPlus website, we have a section for training, and that's where we put all the webinars and recording. So hopefully you'll be able to go there and access the information afterwards in the archived webinars section. And I'll go at the end of the session, I will show you also where that is. So now going back to the actual session for today, here are a few things I would like to cover with you, and I hope it will address some of the questions or ideas you may have. But I need to point out that I know some of you are using Dropbox already, and I also know that some of you are administrators and some of you are educators. So you may be thinking of using Dropbox in many different ways. And my goal today is to give you different angles, different perspectives and ideas, and hopefully that will give you some ideas on what you can do with the tool itself, depending on what you're planning to do with it. So during the session, we'll talk about the Dropbox, what it is, why you may be using it. We'll talk about the setup, the features, and examples. And as I said, we will go directly into the tool, and you will see it in action as well. So thinking about the Dropbox, I have a few questions for you, and I'm hoping to be able to poll you and ask you a few questions. The first question will be, are you currently using Dropbox? And I know some of you are, so this is just going to give us some ideas of where you are when it comes to Dropbox. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to launch a poll, and hopefully it's going to work on your screen. It should open up on your screen, and then you just have to make a selection based on your own experience. If you're using the Dropbox right now or not, or if you are considering it or if you have never used it before. So my screen will tell me when everybody participates. So if you don't participate, I will not be able to close the poll. So I really encourage you to participate. So far we have 58% that voted. So I'm just going to give you a few more minutes to let me know where you are when it comes to Dropbox. Are you using it right now? Are you considering it? Or are you fairly new to it? So we are at 75%, just a few more participants, and we'll be able to show you the results. Still 75%. I'm not going to wait. Some of you may be busy or doing something else, which is absolutely okay. So I don't want to keep up everybody else. So I'm going to close the results and show you what we've got so far. And so far, we've got 20% that said yes, you're using it for work. 10% using it for work and hopefully with students as well. 20% using it at work and at home, which is fantastic. 10% no, but interested, and 40% very new to it. So in a way, the way I'm trying to structure this workshop is to give you ideas on both and make sure that I'm address some of your needs. Either you're a frequent user or somebody that's very, very new to Dropbox. And the other question I have for you will be what are your needs for today? So why are you trying to come to the session and learn about Dropbox? So if you could, again, just give me a quick feedback on whether you're accessing the files or want to access them from home for personal use, or whether you want to use it for work or for everything. Just give me some indications where you are and what are your needs when it comes to Dropbox. Okay, so I can see that some of you are thinking of using it at work with the students. Most of you are thinking of using it for everything. That's really, really neat as well. And some of you may be just using it at work potentially to share with other staff, which is a great way to do it as well. All right, so we have 92% that voted. I'm going to close the poll again, and I'll show you the results. So you will see that it's mostly for everything, which is the cool thing. That's one of the reasons why I use Dropbox as well. I use it for my personal purposes. I use it at work. I use it when I travel. And if I'm doing presentations and sharing information, I'm using it as well. So hopefully today's session will be helpful for you, and we have some indications for where you are and what would you like to do. So now let's just move on to the actual Dropbox. And discussions about what Dropbox is. Many of you know and have heard about Dropbox before. It's a free file storage and sharing service, but I have to mention that there's a paid version available that you can use to store, access files, including photos, documents, and videos. You can also share the files online, and you can share the links to those files or even collaborate with other people using Dropbox and exchanging information. It's a great tool to use. There is a web version of it where you go in and set up an account online, and there's a software that you can install on your computers, including different devices, that will allow you to access the Dropbox in a more streamlined process. It will simplify it for you. And I do have some screen captures to show you as well. But the main idea is that it's a service that you sign up for online. It's a service provided by a company that has its own server somewhere, not even sure where or how we can access them, but basically we log into the account and they give us the access to their space. Limited access. When you want the free account, it will be around 2 gigabytes, but there is a feature that they have is if you share the information with others or if you share your folders, they will start increasing your share for referrals. Because you have other people accessing and signing up for Dropbox as well, they will slowly increase your size. And to give you an example, I started with 2 gigabytes myself. I have it at 12 gigabytes. So I have shared it with a lot of people, mainly because I worked with them on different projects or we had different reasons to exchange information. And that's how I was getting my extra space as well. Just to explain one more time, when it comes to the software, is when you install the software, you can install the software on your computer and desktops that you have at work. You can install it on the computer you have at home. You can install it on your laptops. There's also apps that you can use on your smartphones and tablets where you can go in and access the files. So it's a way for the system to save the information for you in one location and be able to go and access it at a different location as well. What's really neat about that is that it's also cross-platform. So you can use it on Windows, you can use it on Mac, and it's really seamless when it comes to Windows and Mac. You can use it on Linux if you're into that, and all kinds of Androids, Blackberries, iPhones, iPads, and other mobile browsers. So it's very, very versatile when it comes to using it on different devices. As I mentioned, when it comes to pricing, there is a free version where you start at 2 gigabytes, and then you can go up to 18. So I'm at 12. I'm not up there yet, but you can go up to 18 gigabytes just by sharing access to the Dropbox with other people. You can also purchase a pro version of the program, and it's $9.99 a month. You can get plans from 100, 200, or 500 gigabytes. And there's also a business version when you have 1 terabyte of data for 5 users, and there are different plans you can go with that as well. So it's a really, really neat way to even just start off and see if that's something you may want to try. You should actually keep in mind that there are many other tools that are very similar and work in a very similar way. I started with Dropbox a long time ago when it was fairly new. It was becoming very popular. We wanted to test it out, and I absolutely loved it. But there's many other tools available. There will be a Box, there will be SkyDrive, there will be Google Drive. You send it. I know some of you are using Google Docs, all kinds of different ways to share files as well. But when it comes to Dropbox, what I like about that is the software you install on your computer, because it seamlessly works with the other files you have on the computer, and I'll show you how that works later. So in my case, it's sharing the files, accessing the files, whether I'm at home or at work. I live 30 to 40 kilometers from my office, and usually I come to the office. But there are days when there's a snowstorm or I just have to work from home. I don't have to worry that I don't have access to the computer. I can put my files into Dropbox and I can access them at home as well. When I travel, it's the same situation. I have had many cases where I would go to a location where they would tell me, I'll have access to the USB drive. I can bring my memory stick, put it in the computer, and launch the presentation. I literally had a situation where I went to the lab and I was told, I'm just going to ignore this because there's something popping up on my computer. Here we go. I apologize for that. When I got to the lab and I wanted to use my USB stick, the computer told me I have to enter the password to be able to even use the USB stick. And I was in the lab in the evening. There was no tech support. There was nobody else to help me. I could not use my USB stick. And the Dropbox was my only saver because I was able to go log into my Dropbox online and access the files that way. So sometimes you need to have two or different kinds of backups as well for those situations. And Dropbox is a very neat way to have a backup of a file somewhere if you can bring it on a USB stick as well. Now, when it comes to you considering using the Dropbox, I know that some of you may be talking and using Dropbox with the boards or as administrators within the organization. So you could be using it to work on projects, for sharing pictures, sharing different files, resources. As practitioners, you could be using Dropbox for assignments, for homework with your students, and even allowing them to share content online. Some of you, when we talk about using flashcards or memory cards, you tell us that it's very pricey, it may be cumbersome, students may be forgetting it all the time. So considering using a Dropbox as a backup for students to save their files may be a very neat way to go. And again, I'll touch on two different ways of dealing with students when it comes to Dropbox. And when you think about learners, when they start using technology, when they use Dropbox or any other file folding system, it's all about the decompetency as well. They have a chance to practice their skills, develop their new skills when it comes to organizing digital files and folders. It's directly in our OALCF. So that's one way also to address some of the needs your students may have when it comes to that. So I'm just going to move on. And one of the things we discussed at AlphaPlus quite a bit is the idea of using or discussing the tool before you actually use it. And in many cases, we would be asked or addressed about training in a specific tool. And one thing we always start saying is before you even consider the tool, ask a lot of questions. And here are some of the questions you may want to consider before you decide about using the tool in the first place. So for example, why do you want to use this tool? Do you want to use it for work? Do you want to use it with students? Who else is going to use it? So if it's only you and it doesn't take long to learn it, that's great. But if you're thinking of using it within the organization, there may be different considerations you may have to take into account. For example, the idea that other staff may have to be trained on it or the students may have to be trained in it. Is it going to be beneficial to the people you're trying to use the tool with? How much is it going to cost? How much time it will take to be trained in it? And how do you set it up in the organization or classroom? Because there may be different situations as well when the tool may be working for you or may not. And again, I will show you an example where even I was questioning the idea of using Dropbox. Can you use this tool for learning activities or is it mainly for administration? All kinds of questions like that will be very, very important for you. Now, if there are any other questions you may consider before you decide on using a tool, please feel free to put them in the chat or in the questions to let us to give everybody else other ideas or suggestions. But that's a very good way to sort of assess a bit the idea of using the tool before you actually make the leap and do it. Because sometimes you will start using something and you decide, well, it's not really for me, it doesn't really work. So is it really worth it for you? Is it worth the effort? And I'm not saying Dropbox isn't. I'm one of the big fans of Dropbox, but I just want you to keep that in mind because, again, there are many other tools available, and sometimes it's the purpose. If the purpose is important to you, make sure you find a matching tool for it. It's just not for the sake of using Dropbox. It's for the sake of the need for you to use the Dropbox. So I want to give you a quick idea why I started to use the Dropbox. And in my case, the idea of sharing something on the cloud or in the cloud can be a bit tricky, or it was very hard to get used to at first. I think after a few years, we all are getting used to the idea that a lot of services and things we do are online. But in my case, I really just started working on different projects and being able to share the files with other people, whether it was pictures or files. In my case, I was developing a report, and I just needed pictures to be sent to me. But I was finding it very hard when somebody would be sending me 10 or 15 emails a day because there was lots of pictures, and they were taking a big size, so I had to save them. I had to make sure I'm not missing any pictures that were coming in, or maybe even content that was coming for the report. So but rather than doing the emails back and forth, we set up a Dropbox account and we shared the folder. So this way, when we were sharing the folder, whatever was added by my colleague to the folder, I was able to see right away. And then when I was adding something, my colleague was able to see that right away. And that way we were able to exchange and share the information very quickly. So in my case, I do use Dropbox for many different things, for reports, for pictures. When I'm at home sometimes, I need to post pictures, and rather than looking for different things or sending myself the picture, I'll go to the Dropbox and access it as well. Activities, templates, handouts, all kinds of different things I would use for presentations or when I go out to the field and work with different organizations. And as I mentioned, when traveling, I will take my USB stick with me as a backup, but I would often put my files in the Dropbox as well, just in case, so that I will have another backup. If something happens with my computer or something happens with my USB drive, this way I have a backup somewhere online I can access. So when it comes to the actual Dropbox, there's different ways you can set it up. The very easy way would be to go to the Dropbox website and just log in and set up an account. So you will see there's a small image that I have on the screen that shows you that you'll be asked for your first name, last name, email, and password. It is very important to remember the email idea because each Dropbox is linked to your email account. So I'll give you an example. I set up my Dropbox using my personal Gmail account. And at work, I may be collaborating with someone, and they may have a company-wide or their own Dropbox, and when they want to share the file with me, they will send me an email to my work address. It doesn't work. That means I will have to set up a new Dropbox because I don't have a Dropbox set up for my work address. I have it set up for my home address. So what I do is I very often tell them, before you send it to me, you should know I want you to use a specific email address for it. Because when I do that, the system will connect the information and allow me to share the file seamlessly. I will not have to log in and out from different accounts. And again, I'll show you more information around that when we get there. I'm just going to give you a few snapshots of the features that are available. This is just through PowerPoint, so this is just basic screen captures. But I will go and launch the actual site as well, so you will be able to see it twice, and hopefully that way I will be able to answer any questions you may have. So the screen captures you're looking at right now is basically a screen capture of my computer at work. I have navigation and different folders on my left side, and whenever you go to your computer, you will see the same thing. You will see different folders, but one of them is a Dropbox folder. That Dropbox folder gets installed when you download a program from Dropbox to install on your computer. And it really works as many other files and folders you use on your regular computer. The folders are set up in a similar way. The names are set up in a similar way as well. The only difference, but a very big difference, is that each folder has this green circle with a check mark on it. What that means is that the files that I have on my computer, all those files, are checkmarked because they are synchronized and synced with all the files on my online account. The online account I created when I started using Dropbox before I downloaded the software will reflect the same files for me as well. So I can access and manage the files through my computer, through the software I installed and the folders I access, or I can go online and access the same information online as well. So when you download the actual software, not only you get the folder called the Dropbox installed on your computer, you also get shortcuts to help you with accessing the information and files as well. One of them will be the installation of a tiny Dropbox icon in the bottom right corner. And what it does is you can click on it, and it will give you a shortcut and information on the latest files that you have added. It will also give you information on how much memory you have left on your account. And it will also give you an option to even go to the online version. And when you will click on that, it will automatically log you in, which is a really neat way to navigate between your computer and the cloud version of your Dropbox. So now when we come to the actual website, I can click on the icon, takes me to the website, and the same folders I have seen on my Dropbox on my computer appear on the online version. They may be laid out slightly differently, but they are very, very similar, and they provide the same kind of information. Now, just a reminder that the idea of syncing, so I'm just bringing back the file again to show you, is that I went through a Dropbox on my desktop computer, accessed the files, it got saved to the online version, which is the servers for the Dropbox, and then because I was online, I have to be online for those to be able to sync to each other. When I'm online, they sync, and then now I'm able to access the information through the laptop, through the website, or other devices wherever I install the application for Dropbox. Now, when you are looking at files in your Dropbox folder, it does look like a regular folder on your computer. But what you can do with those folders is much more. It's not only that you can access and put content in different folders, you can also share the folders with other people. And there's two different ways you can do it. One way is to share it through a link. So what the system will do is it will provide you with a link, and when somebody clicks on that link, they will be able to access the file. So I'm going to give you a very quick example. And what I'm going to do is, actually what I did is I put in the chat box a link to a Dropbox file. That link is basically a PowerPoint presentation I'm giving you right now. I went to the Dropbox, uploaded the file or added the file to my Dropbox folder, and then I right-click on the computer, right-click directly on the file, and just said, I want the shared Dropbox link. The system gave me the actual link, and I'm able to share it with you. If I was online, what will happen is I will have a chain icon directly next to the file, and then I will be able to do the same thing. I will get the link that I will be able to share with you. Now, what you can do with that information is not much. You can access and download this information, but you cannot make changes and upload that information back into my Dropbox. To do that, you have to do a different kind of sharing. In this case, you're not sharing the link. What you need to do is you need to share a folder. And it works in a bit different way. So what will happen in that case is, let's say I was online, or when I was on my computer, there was an option to share a folder. Rather than a link, I share a folder. And when I share the folder, the system will ask me, do you want to share existing folder or a new folder? And give me all kinds of different options and give me a specific features that I can select. But what will happen next is the system itself will ask, what's the email address of the person you want to share the file with? And that's why when I mentioned earlier, it's important to know if somebody has a Dropbox account and which email they're using, is because depending on the email address you provide, if somebody already has a Dropbox account linked to that specific email, Dropbox will connect those two files together. It will not only give somebody else access to the Dropbox, but it will place that file or folder in their own Dropbox account and make it listed directly with the other files that person may have. So it becomes seamless. Now, if both accounts are connected and the file or folder are shared, basically I can go in and make changes to that folder, and the person that I'm sharing with or the person that shared it with me can do the same thing. We are working and collaborating on the same file, which is just amazing. Imagine the possibilities. I'm in Toronto, and you could be in Thunder Bay or Timmins, and I literally can send you an email saying, I'm sharing a folder with you, and I can tell you, well, please add all the pictures you want me to include in a report to that folder. No emails after that. Everything goes into a folder. I open my Dropbox, and everything is there. Or another option could be you may want to send files to the students. You can send them an email with a link or allow them to connect with you through the Dropbox, and they will be able to access all kinds of files you may want to share with them. What's also amazing about Dropbox is that not only it allows you to share the files, but it will tell you who you're sharing it with, which is a new feature. It wasn't available before, and it could get people in trouble. But I just noticed that they added that feature, and it's called sharing when you're actually on the website, and it will tell you. So in my case, I'm just showing you 3 of my files. I have one called Westmore Auto Documented, which is basically a file I set up for my dad. My dad has a business. He's doing all kinds of files. Sometimes we need to exchange pictures or Excel spreadsheets when it's coming to finances. I'm sharing it with him. And it's not only with him. I'm also sharing it with my husband because we want, both of us, we want to have access to the same folder and support my dad in what he's doing. He doesn't have to email me the file if he has any problems. I can just go in and see the file directly there. Another one is a client I work with. Her friend is Michelle, and her company is called Living Well. And we have been using the files and working together for a long time. And you will see in this case, it just says, I'm sharing the file with Michelle. And in the brackets, I have a very specific information I added. And that says, my folder shared with Michelle. Our issue became, and that was a learning curve for us, is that I had a Living Well folder on my Dropbox, and she had a Living Well folder on her Dropbox. So we never knew which one was mine and which one was hers. And occasionally, I would come to the office, or I will be at home, and I will start getting Dropbox notifications telling me that I just added 20 files to my folder, and literally within a day, my limit for the data I have has been exceeded because it was lots of pictures and different files. Well, my friend Michelle has been adding all kinds of files there, not knowing that she's actually adding them to my account, not to her own account. So things like that can get a bit messy, and sometimes it's important to work out the actual setup and how everything works. Now I'm going to take a quick break and see if there is any questions that you have. I think there is one. Just to confirm, is it true that the person you're sharing files with via link, the one where they cannot edit and upload, does not need a Dropbox account? It looks as though if you share a folder, the recipient does need a Dropbox account. That is true, absolutely, Summer. So when you're sharing a link, they don't have to have an account. That's why when I shared the presentation with you, I wasn't checking if you have the Dropbox or not. You can literally just open it up. You don't have to be logged in, and you can see the actual document, or you can download it to your own computer. If you're doing a file sharing with someone, they do have to have a Dropbox account. So I hope that answers your question. So let me just continue with the files, and if there's anything else, please stop me. I get too excited about those things. The other way when you can think about Dropbox is specifically when you're working with students, and I'll touch on that a few times because I know some of you are considering that. Imagine a situation where when I am sitting in front of my computer, I have my own dedicated computer to me. I can install the software. That software links directly to my Dropbox account, and they're syncing together. But if it's a classroom setting and there's multiple number of computers that students share on an ongoing basis, so their computers are not dedicated to them, that kind of installation may not work. That software will not work because it's dedicated to a specific account. So in those cases, you may need to or want to work with your students and actually have them go online and just use the web version of the Dropbox. It's not the best solution, and I'll give you other ideas, but if you do, you should know that on the web version, you also can upload files. So it doesn't have to be the software installed on your computer to do that. There are icons directly in the web browser, in the web version of the Dropbox, that allow you to upload files. So I just put a picture for you where let's say it was LBS class files, and I wanted to upload pictures for the class. You will see that there are different ways. There's an icon on top with a tiny arrow, or there's a web uploader option that you can choose to upload the files directly online without having the software installed on your computer, which is a very, very good thing to know as well, especially when you're traveling and maybe you're in the library or somewhere where somebody gave you the actual access to their laptop, but you don't have the software, but we want to share something or save something. You can still do it directly through the web browser. The one thing that's very important when it comes to Dropbox is the syncing. And I mentioned earlier that when you sync files online, the internet has to be enabled. So if you're working on your computer and saving files to your Dropbox folder, that's great. They will be going there. But if the computer is connected to the internet, you will start seeing that there is this icon, either blue or green. The blue icon with 2 circles on it will imply that the system is in the process of syncing. The green one means it has been synced already. And again, a very, very good example, my life learning experience. I would go home, I would work on my files early in the morning because I'm trying to catch up before I come to work, saved everything, closed the computer, came to work. I cannot access the files, they're not there. The reason is I closed the computer before realizing that the computer did not sync yet all the files. So when I closed it, it didn't finish. So it's very important that if you're working on the files and you're trying to sync them and make sure that they're available online and on other devices, that all those check marks have to be green, not blue. Everything has to be synced before you close the computer. Now, what I would like to do with you, just to give you some ideas, is to give you a few examples. And from that, after that, we'll go into the actual Dropbox, and maybe we can discuss some of those examples in more detail. But if you're just thinking of using Dropbox for your personal experience, even without students, or even just for your own sake of being able to access the files at home, you may want to do that. So at work, if you're at work and you're able to set up the Dropbox and install the folder for yourself, you can literally just use it to create folders, potentially for your class or places where you may want to plan for files, pictures, and resources specifically for the class or other projects. Now, if you do that and everything gets synced to your online account, to the cloud, then you can travel, go to different locations, or maybe sometimes you work from different locations within your organizations. You can just log in from the computer on the other end where you also have that software installed and you have all the files there. So that way you're saving yourself the time of emailing and trying to remember if I have all the files with me. The online service does it for you. It syncs all the files for you. So that may be one way for you to consider it. You don't even have to go any further with that. Now, you could also switch the idea and go further a bit. So in this case, you can still create the files for yourself. Let's say it could be a file for activities and handouts and a small image. I hope you can actually see it. But that image is a folder I created in a Dropbox. And what I did is I went to the Taskbased activities portal where there's a lot of activities, task-based activities you can use with the students. You may have your favorites that you may want to use specifically in your class. So you can save all of them to the Dropbox. And if it comes to the time when you want your students to do some work on it, you can decide, well, I don't want them to be changing or doing anything. I just want them to be able to access that specific file. You can just give them a link to that file. And when they follow that file, they will be able to see the document. So again, you could stop on only providing a link. You don't have to go any further than that. So by this point, you're creating and organizing files in the Dropbox, and that's enough. Or you're taking a step further and saying, oh, I have some files I may want to share. I'll provide a link to it. And then the students can go and then work through it. Or your colleagues, if that's a colleague you want to see the document or review the documents for you. So remember, when it's sharing a link, that goes back to the question from Summer, when you're sharing a link, someone can view and access and download the file, but they cannot change it and bring it back to your Dropbox. That's when the file sharing comes in. So it's a bit different process. So we are going to move to that and now talk about the idea of sharing files and folders. The idea is amazing because, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to collaboration and being able to share content, it could be very, very encouraging for you and for your students to access information in a bit different way, to practice your skills online, to share information with each other, different ways to do it. So in this case, you may want to create a subfolder within your Dropbox for a specific project. And this time you're not sharing a link, you're actually sharing a folder with your collaborators. So let's assume it's one of you. Let's say it's going to be Diana, and Diana is, she actually has an account already, and I know her email address. So what I can do is I can create a folder and now say, I want to share this folder with Diana. The system sends her an email, and she opens the email, goes to the link that's included in the email, and the system will help add the file to her own Dropbox. And now we both have access to the same folder. And from that time on, Diana can put pictures on it, information and resources. I can go in and access them, review them, and change them. We are at this point collaborating. If she did not have an account and I will just send it to her email address, the Dropbox will tell her, you can now set up a Dropbox account. We'll guide you through the process. And on top of that, we are going to give Monica some referral credits for sharing that account with you. So There's different ways you can choose and work with the Dropbox files, but the main idea is that at this point it's a collaborative process. And when it comes to examples of working or using it in the field, think about working with your colleagues on specific projects. Repository of resources, for example, I know many programs mention that it will be very useful for them. Dropbox could be an amazing tool for you, whether it's specific Word files or PDF files, or just a document with a list of links. All that information could be sitting together in one folder for all of you to be shared and accessed, right? So I can see Samra mentioning using a shared folder. Could students potentially open each other's assignments and edit them? Yes. So it depends how you share, and I'll get to it right next. Samra, you're just reading my mind. You're amazing. So there's different ways of sharing folders. So when you share a folder with a specific email address, you're sharing it only with that person. If you're sharing the same folder with multiple email addresses, the same folder is shared with all those email addresses. So let's give an example of a classroom setting where you want to have a folder with pictures. In this case, you can create a folder and you can share the folder with all the students in the class. They have access to the same folder. They can access all the information and add it in. But if it's more the work that they're doing or assignments they're working on and they're not comfortable with sharing that kind of information, you can come up with a bit different process. And that's when I mentioned that the reason why you're using a tool is important to define and sort of highlight some of the needs you may have because they may change the setup for you. So when it comes to the students, there will be a personal account or class Dropbox account. And what I mean by that is that rather than working with a student and their own account, you could consider setting up a classroom Dropbox account. And the reason I'm proposing that is that some of you I know are using laptops in the classroom or computers in the classroom that are shared. So that syncing of the software with specific accounts for students will not work. They will have to go online and do everything through the web version of Dropbox, which may not be very easy for them. But if you, for specific assignments, consider setting up a classroom Dropbox account, then you can sync all the computers to the same account. And within the account, you can create folders and subfolders. And in that case, you could, let's say, create a folder called student folders, and each student gets their own folder. So when they work on assignments, they put the work into their own folder. And it's a similar idea to what you would do on a regular computer. If students on a computer were putting their own files into folders on the computer that potentially was shared as a drive for the company, for the organization, they would be able to see each other's accounts. And I know that's what you're asking is that this setup with the classroom Dropbox account would allow other people to see the other folders and potentially work done by others. That's why you could consider using Dropbox for each individual account. But what that means is that you could set up a folder for Anne, for George, and Tammy. That's the image I have on the slide that I have right now. And what I can do then is say, okay, I'm going to send an email and invite Anne only to Anne folder. Or I'm going to invite George only to George folder. And Tammy to Tammy folder. That way, they each get linked to that specific folder, not to other things. So they cannot see each other folders. The caveat in that, the problem with that is that not all the students will be comfortable enough. So it all depends on your class. It depends on how much time you're spending with the students, how comfortable they may be with technology. And there will be other sides to that as well. So if it is a classroom Dropbox account, it's the same username and password for everyone, right, if they want to go online. So if they want to access that information from home, that may not be as easy, or again, everybody can make changes. So I'm going to see, because I think I see a hand, and Robert, I'm going to pause for a minute and I'm going to enable your microphone. Robert, you had a question? Go ahead. Can you hear me, Robert? Okay, so Robert, I don't hear you. I'm not sure why. Okay, Robert, I think you're self-muted, so you may have to click on your microphone as well. Here we go. How about now? Okay, it still doesn't work. So it seems something happened. The information is not going through. So Robert, how about you use the question box and address, I will be able to address your question in the question box. Perfect. And the question from Robert. Okay, you will type your question. Fantastic. Thank you, Robert. So there are different ways to look at setting up the files and Dropbox accounts with students. If it's a personal account, so you contact Anne and send an email to Anne and she has a Dropbox set up, she can go at home and access her files directly in her own account. But if it's the classroom Dropbox account, then you have to make a decision. Do I allow my students to access this folder from home or not? Or is it only in class? There are two sides to that, and it just depends on your preference. The nice thing about the classroom Dropbox account is if the students are working on things together, they could be collaborating, they could be putting files in the same folders, maybe for projects or collecting information or exchanging information, could be recipes or things that they're working on. The other possibility is also the idea of students making mistakes or accidentally deleting files. And I'll cover that as well, because you need to know that Dropbox covers and actually saves changes and it keeps history of all the changes. So hopefully that make things a bit easier for you as well. So Robert, your question was, can entire programs be saved in a Dropbox account and thereby run on any computer that is synchronized? So I'm assuming you're asking me, can I run a Microsoft Word directly on Dropbox? And the answer is no. You have to look for different kind of cloud services. And I know my manager said I have to clarify that with everyone because that's very, very common. So Dropbox specifically is specializing in files and folders. So exchanging that type of information. But there are different services that you can purchase or access where companies will specialize in giving you access to programs in the cloud. And I can tell you we do use a program here. We use it through Citrix. The same company actually that provides the GoToWebinar services, where we have to go log in into our account and then our computer connects to Citrix to give us access to PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, to Excel program as well. Again, we all have our preferences, and within the organization we went through back and forth when it comes to using it. Sometimes the system is slow. Sometimes it's confusing because we get lost. The system doesn't update. Some of the ways it provides the information is not the same we would like to see it. For example, it changes extensions on us. Or when it comes to, for example, browsers, we cannot use the latest version of a browser. We have to use older version of the browsers provided by that company, which are not always very effective. So you could hire out or use outside services for providing that kind of cloud service, but that goes beyond file sharing. So let me just read it one more time. Would you recommend using Dropbox for sharing documents with board members instead of sending by email? Currently, documents sit on a wiki, but this appears not to work for some members. Same question for access to a complete board manual. Such a huge file to have to share on a memory stick or via emails. I absolutely agree with you, Diana. I really think that it's a good point. You may as well just put it on the Dropbox, and you can send an email to people reminding them that here is a link to all the files to the board manual, or here is a link to the latest documents we'll be discussing at the upcoming meeting. So you can utilize that for that purpose as well. And I know there are maybe other participants who may be using the files with the board members. So if you want to chime in and either raise a hand or share it through questions or chat box, that would be fantastic as well. So let me just quickly review raised hands. Robert, I'm going to lower your hand, make sure I covered everyone. So we had Deborah. I think I see Deborah, and I just want to confirm, was it a question or was it a comment? If I skipped that or missed that, I apologize. Okay. Dropbox account, sharing the files. Can just the executable files be saved in a Dropbox account and still run properly? I never tried, Robert. I don't know. It could be. The question is if Dropbox will allow you to do that. I just never tried. I think there may be a restriction of what kind of files they will allow, and exe files may not be allowed, but it's worth trying. And I know there was Deb. I think, Deb, you had a comment somewhere, but I don't see it. So if there's anything, Deborah Flynn, if I'm missing something or if I forgot something, can you just resend the question to me or your comment? That would be fantastic too. All right. So I hope that sort of gives you some highlights or pros and cons of using Dropbox and ideas you may want to consider for your specific program and your specific setup. The Classroom Dropbox account, I was sitting trying to figure out how could that work in a shared computer environment, and I really think it may be useful. Maybe not for all of the assignments and all work sharing, but some of the collaborative work, some of the information exchange could be done that way without having students having to set up their own personal accounts, which they may find a bit cumbersome at first. And the idea for that also is that that software that comes with the Dropbox, because it sort of integrates directly with the regular filing system on the computer, it seems like it's just a seamless process. So when you're teaching your students to work with files and to work with folders, Dropbox is just one of those folders. They don't need to go and know all the other details around it. We just all know that they will sync online, but even the students at the beginning don't even have to know that. Slowly you can teach them, you can explain to them, even teach them the cloud experience and how they can access information from any other location. But that could be a slower process to get them used to the idea as well. So there's different ways to do that. Now there is a resource we have developed, which was sample tasks and activities that AlphaPlus developed just probably 6 months ago or so. And there's a lot of different information there, different sample activities you could be using with your students. And the reason I'm bringing it up here is that one of the examples you could consider is, as I mentioned, downloading task-based activities from the Taskbased portal could be one way. The resource we developed has all kinds of activities. It asks students to go online, access to specific websites and information. But that resource also has worksheets that students can write on and type activities in. And you could take a Word file. We provide the activities both in PDF and in a Word file. You could break it down into your needs or decide which ones you may want to use with your students. And you can put them on your Dropbox and again share them with your students to work within the class. So that way you have preset activities and tasks that you could be using within the class. And if you decide to share with and collaborate with your colleagues within the program, you can just build that repository of information and resources for yourself. You can use it from different locations. So again, if one day you are in London, but the other day you have to travel to a bit more remote location, you have all those files together. You don't have to worry that you forgot to take the folder or you forgot to take the USB stick with you. And that sharing, collaborating can be very, very useful for you. So that's just one of the other ideas for you to consider, that it could be resources that already exist that you can adapt or include in your Dropbox to share and work with your students or colleagues as well. Now, there's a few tips, again, from some of the experience I had. I did mention the issue with naming and sharing the folders, such as the idea that my colleague and I, we had named the folder the same way, Living Well, and we both were not sure who owns the folder and who can make changes to the folder when it comes to adding all this information. So in this case, what we started doing is started adding information in the brackets. So when my friend would want to add files to a folder, she would know not to use the one that says Monica's folder shared with Michelle, unless it was something she wanted to share with me specifically. So in this case, when she was adding all those files and reports, she was just cleaning up her computer, and I was getting all those files in my own Dropbox. So keep that in mind when working with students as well, that naming the files, organizing them in a specific way, maybe even developing some kind of grid or guidelines would be useful, not only for you or your students, also for your colleagues possibly as well. Now, the other thing you should remember about is that when you're sharing a folder or file with somebody else, they can accidentally delete those files. And I don't know if, Diana, you're here. I think Lana is not in today. I was working with Lana on one of the projects where we were trying to work with pictures, and the folder was huge on Dropbox. And one day I get a phone call from Lana, and she tells me, I'm so excited. I cleaned up my Dropbox, and I deleted that folder with all the pictures. It was just too big. And she didn't realize that what she did is she deleted the folder, and I also don't have now access to any of those pictures. Because as soon as she made the change, the system synchronized with the web version and made the changes on my end as well. So again, some of the things you need to consider when it comes to backups, potentially if it's important information, I could have had another folder or copied them to my computer somewhere else to make sure that I have a backup. I was reading today that some people were recommending when it comes to Dropbox that if you have a very sensitive document that you don't want to lose, you may consider uploading it directly to the Dropbox. Dropbox backs up a lot of information and keeps the history of information, and it could possibly be sitting in a separate folder. So even when the things are syncing, that extra copy stays directly in your Dropbox. But the idea of syncing is I make a change on one end, the system will compare and make a change on the other end. So if you have sensitive information, if you're worried somebody may delete it, make sure that you have a copy of it somewhere else. Just keep that in mind. When it comes to the actual backups or history, there's a new feature also on the Dropbox where they have events and it keeps history of everything that somebody's working on. And finally, Dropbox also has a folder that calls Follows. What's amazing about that is it will pull pictures from all your folders you have and put them in a Photos folder. So it may be easier for you to access the pictures. You can even sync it to your mobile devices. So if you have a mobile phone and you take pictures on the phone, in the app version of Dropbox, you can enable the Dropbox to save all the pictures from your phone directly to your Dropbox account, which is kind of neat. So this is sort of a quick overview of the Dropbox. There will be different links and information that you can review. It's all in the PowerPoint presentation. The next webinar we'll have is on Tuesday, November 19th. So if you decide to come, the next one will be on Google Hangouts, and I'll give you a lot of overviews for that. When we close the session today, which is not yet, but when we close the session today, you will be asked to fill out a very brief survey just to tell me what did you think about the session and if there's anything I can improve. And now what I want to do is I want to show you my own Dropbox. So in this case, what I'm going to do is literally click on my file folder or my computer where I have all my files, and hopefully you can see it. Let me just quickly check that you're seeing the same thing. Okay, so just 1 second. Can somebody tell me in the question box or the chat if you can see my folder? I think you can see my folder now. So when I open my folder, I can see all kinds of different files that I have, access to different drives, different libraries, and between them is my Dropbox account. That Dropbox account is the software that was installed on my computer. It just looks like one of the regular folders. And you can see a list of all kinds of folders that I have, that I work with, that I use for different purposes. Some of them are for work, some of them are for personal use, some of them for the contracts I work on, all kinds of information. The one that I'm sharing with you through different links today is a folder called Tech Tuesdays. So if I just go and open that folder, you can see different files that I have. I have 2 folders. One of them will be favorite pictures, and one of them will be presentations. I just want to make sure that you see that information as well. And what happens is you will see that there are 2 green check marks. Each check mark means that those are synced with my online version of the Dropbox. I don't have to go online to access the information or do anything. I can literally just work with those folders. They're seamless. They're part of my folder system. I can go in and open the information and access the files. One of them is a PowerPoint that I shared with you directly through Dropbox. I have it in a PowerPoint version and I have it in a PDF version, just in case. I use PDF to display for you today because PowerPoint sometimes can get wonky. But what I can literally do is within the Dropbox on my computer, through my desktop, I can just right-click on the file. And what it will do, it will give me all kinds of different options. And I'm going to just use quickly a, no, that doesn't work for me. I was trying to show you if I can do something, but I can't with the tools. So I'm just going to go back and show you a drop-down menu. Right-click on the file, a drop-down menu opens. And when that will open, what I will see is different options. One of them is shared Dropbox link. And that's how I shared the PDF file with you today. So you can only access the file, but you cannot make any changes. I can go and view the file directly in the Dropbox. That's the website version of Dropbox. And that's it for now. But sometimes, not always, there will be sections where I can also do share a folder. Now, if you're using a Mac, those options may be set up differently or called slightly differently. But the function is very, very similar. So just to give you examples of the LBS classes that I wanted to show you when it comes to the folders, I'm just going to go back and click on LBS class. I mentioned that as a Dropbox users, you could be using folders in different ways. So many of them are empty folders, but you could consider using a handouts folder or class activities folder or pictures folder that you can share with the actual class. And if you set up a Classroom Dropbox account, this way all the students can have access to those folders. They can see everything, but if you're okay with that, if they're okay with that, why not? So you will see that if I go to student folders, and George and Tammy are folders I set up for specific students, and I can ask them, open a Word document, work on your resume, and when you're done, save it in a folder with your name in it. And that way, they can save it directly in the class. I can tell them as a backup, put it on a memory stick, so they have an extra copy. But depending on how that folder is set up, it could be sitting in the Classroom Dropbox folder so everybody can see it, or I could have shared specific folder with Anne only if she had an account in Dropbox, or George only if he had an account in Dropbox, and they could even go home and access those files from home. So again, depending on your specific situation, on the students you're working with, that information can change. And so let's say if I click on the file again, I'm right-clicking, and I say, now I want to view it in the Dropbox on my website. So what will happen is the system is going to try and switch to the Dropbox account. Now, I don't know if my computer will do it because it may freeze, but hopefully it will load for you shortly as well. And so I went directly into Dropbox. The system logged me in. In the top right corner, you can see my name. I'm now switched from desktop version to the online version. And because George does not have anything in his folder, the system tells me that it's empty. But I can either upload here, or I can have George bring the files here and access them from the website directly as well. On the left side, I mentioned that there's a photos folder, so if I had different photos, the system will display them. If I had shared information with anyone, the system would tell me if I shared everything. Because this is my own account, so see, I'm still in Monika Dziękowska-Pacyna, I just switched to all the folders that are sitting in my account, and I was showing you that earlier, that it will tell me who am I sharing files with. If I only provided links to files, the system will also tell me, it will tell me which specific folders I gave links to others. So that way it may be a quick way to access that information and see what did I share, when did I share it. I can take away that link or cancel it, delete it, but it's a good way to keep that information handy. In events, which is a section, everything is on the left, in the online folder. In events, you will see all kinds of changes that were happening. The system keeps track of all that information. So you have, I added, I edited, I deleted, all that information is there. And you can see all my activity based on the hour. So for some of you, it may take a bit of time to load on the screen. So let's just wait. Here we go. And you should be able to see that on the right side, it will tell me when I actually made the changes. I did have a question in the past from someone asking me, is there a way to improve the backup process? So we know that Dropbox keeps track of history. It even keeps track of what was deleted. But if you're still insecure or not comfortable, Dropbox provides services where you can actually purchase additional package from them, where they will provide ongoing backup in a very specific location for you. So the person that was asking me about the files was thinking about the board and some of the sensitive information that they may be sharing, and they wanted to have a different location where the files will be shared. And there is a service from Dropbox. You just have to go to their website. And if you're interested, I can send you a link to that. I forgot to include it in the PowerPoint. But that is a very good information to have if you're still worried about Dropbox. For me, I absolutely love the tool. We talked about the fact that at AlphaPlus we are using some of the cloud services for actual programs. The same thing works with our files. We can use that service for files. but we find that we just find it very cumbersome, very difficult, and slow. Slow. And for example, like I'm delivering this session in GoToWebinar today, I would not be able to share with you the files I have on that cloud service. It would be very slow and it wouldn't let me do it. So I have to share files directly from my computer, which means I have to download everything from that cloud version to my computer to work with it. So it goes back and forth in different ways. But just so you know that this is happening for us, and we're learning through that as well. What are some of the things that we like and some of the things we don't like? If you're thinking of sharing files, consider Dropbox. Consider just using it for yourself and access from home, using it with your colleagues, using it with your students, and I hope you will really enjoy it. If you have any questions, I will answer any questions you may have right now. You can raise your hands, but it's 4 o'clock and I have to wrap up. So thank you so much for coming. And as I mentioned, any questions, any feedback from you, I really appreciate it. The feedback that I'm going to ask you to fill out is not going to launch until we close the session. So some of you I know may have been leaving already, but if not, I'll just go through some of the questions or comments you provided. We'll make sure that we answer all of them. But in the meantime, if you decide to leave, hopefully the feedback form will launch for you when you exit the webinar. And to exit, you just go to File, and I think there will be Exit as the last option on the menu. So again, thank you so much. I'll just go through the questions one more time to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so Louise, you were saying that my voice was breaking up, distracting. I totally understand. Sometimes it's the internet connection. Deb, you mentioned that you did not have a question. I apologize for that. When one shares a link to a folder within Dropbox, would the people opening the shared folder be able to print the documents within? Yes. So if I understand this right, Diana, let's say you share a folder with me with annual report, and I just go and open the Dropbox folder, click on the annual report. What will happen is it will launch directly on your computer. And no, but it's a link. So for a link, you have to download the document to your computer, and only then you will be able to print it. So sharing a folder or sharing a link, different ways of working. Link is only for you to get access to the document, which you have to download. Sharing a folder is you have access directly to it. You can open it directly within your computer. Roger, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate that as well. And then I can see some of you are providing feedback, so thank you for that. Thank you, everyone. If there's anything else, please let me know. You can always send me emails. If I got too excited, I apologize. I just love those things. Okay, but I'm willing to beat a GLI. Will have I was doing. Okay, so Louise, you're not brave enough. Come on, I can really guide you through it and help you with that. So if you really want to try, let me know. I'll guide you through the process. Any other questions or feedback, please feel free to let me know. And when it comes to the recording, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop